A grandmother who thought she'd lost everything after her son's death suddenly finds herself pushing open a door she never knew was there, one that leads straight into a terrifying truth. Behind that tragedy were secrets buried deep, all tied to the real origins of her granddaughter. And in those days when everything felt darkest, when her whole world seemed to be falling apart, it was love, nothing but love, that kept them standing. 'Cause sometimes it's only family stories, those threads woven from blood, memory, and faith, that can guide us back into the light. Before we go any further, may God bless you and keep you. And right now, let us know where you're watching from. I never thought my whole life could start falling apart over an old knitted bag. For real, if somebody had told me this a few months back, I would have laughed and told them they'd been watching too many movies. But that sticky, heavy afternoon inside my little apartment on the south side, with car horns popping off and kids hollering over a basketball game down on the street, I just froze when I saw my daughter-in-law, Maya Ellis, toss that bag in the trash like it was some foul-smelling garbage. That bag wasn't nothing fancy, just a soft caramel-colored knit I made with these aching hands. A gift for baby Amari, my first grandbaby, the child I love more than my own breath. I spent night after night under that dim yellow lamp, stitching every loop like a prayer for that little girl's peace. And Maya, just like that, threw it away like it was some kind of burden. I was only trying to step out and open the door for Maya and Amari like I always do. But when I peeked through that foggy little window, I saw Maya standing by the building's trash bin, that bag in her hand, her face cold as stone. No hesitation, she shoved it deep down into the bottom, slammed that heavy lid like she was burying something she didn't want nobody to find. And right then, I felt a chill crawl up my spine, like I'd just seen something I wasn't supposed to. That uneasy feeling hit me so fast I stood there a few seconds, trying to understand what in the world I'd just watched. Maya ain't never been the dream daughter-in-law I hoped for, but I ain't never seen her act strange like that, either. When I opened the door and called her name, she jumped a little, turned around with this stiff little smile on her face. "Just throwing out some trash," she said, eyes dodging mine. I looked at the bag she was carrying. My knit wasn't there. Amari was wrapped in a thin cotton cloth instead. And that baby smiled at me, those big glossy eyes and chubby cheeks melting me from the inside out. But even that warm moment couldn't quiet that sharp, clawing feeling in my chest. I stepped a little closer, kept my voice soft. "Where's the knit bag I made? I saw you holding it." Maya paused, just for one beat. One tiny beat, but long enough for me to know she was scrambling. "Oh, it got dirty. I threw it out. That was it. No more explanation." She walked right into my home like nothing happened, set Amari on the sofa, and said she needed to wash her hands. But the second that bathroom door clicked shut, I turned around and rushed straight back to that trash bin. I know ain't no 63-year-old woman got any business running like that. My knees been worn down for years, my breath always coming up short. But something in my chest pushed me forward, told me I didn't have 1 second to waste. I grabbed that trash can lid with both hands, my fingers shaking so hard they slapped against the metal rim. I dug through bag after bag like a woman gone mad, and then I saw it. That knit bag, crushed at the bottom, squeezed between an empty pizza box and a stack of wet newspapers. I pulled it out with my bare hands. My caramel yarn, the one I'd stitched with nothing but love, was dirty, wrinkled, stretched in places like somebody had yanked on it too hard. It was the weight, heavier than it ever should have been, heavy in a way that bag had no business being, not for holding a baby toy or two. I squeezed the bottom and right away felt something solid, cold, with sharp little edges. My heart kicked harder. I've lived through a lot, losing my husband, losing my sister, losing my old house in that fire, but I ain't never felt my hands go cold so fast. I carried that bag back upstairs, shut my door, locked it, stood in my kitchen trying to breathe slow. Maya was still in my living room with Amari, playing like everything was normal. She had no idea that the thing she'd tried to bury was sitting right back in my hands. And me, I stood there, looking down at that crooked knit, knowing deep in my bones that this was no accident. I opened the lining, slid my hand inside. My fingers hit something hard, something smooth, something that did not belong in a baby's bag. 30 years as a nurse taught me what certain things feel like just by touch. And this was no toy, no bottle, no household junk. It felt like electronics. I grabbed my scissors and cut open a small seam. The thread split, and I pulled out the object. A mini voice recorder. Black. No label. Switched. OFF. I didn't move. Not 1 inch. The whole house got so quiet I could hear the second hand on the wall clock ticking. A recorder? Inside my grandbaby's knit bag? Why would Maya hide something like that? And more importantly, what was on it? I heard the bathroom faucet stop. Maya was coming out. I shoved the recorder into the kitchen drawer, threw a towel over the knit bag, and forced myself to stand normal just as Maya walked in, drying her hands with a paper towel. "What's that, Mom?" she asked, her eyes sliding over me like she was checking every little thing I did. I gave her a smile so fake my cheeks hurt. "Nothing, baby. Just taking out some trash." But inside me, the truth was taking shape clear, as rain hitting a tin roof. Something is wrong. Very wrong. And whatever was hidden inside that bag was only the beginning. I couldn't keep my mind steady that whole afternoon. Not with Maya sitting out in my living room laughing and carrying on with Amari like she was the perfect mother. But that perfection, the one I'd tried so hard to believe in, felt fake now. Hollow. Every word she said floated right past me. In that little apartment of mine, every sound got swallowed up by one single question. Why was a recorder in my grandbaby's knit bag? Who was recording what? That uneasy feeling wasn't just a hunch. It felt just like the feeling I used to get right before the ER rolled in a critical patient, like something terrible was already on its way. 30-some years of nursing, spending long nights caring for folks at their most vulnerable. It taught me one thing. The body knows the truth long before the mind's ready to face it. When Maya and Amari finally left, I walked them down the stairs with the stiffest, fakest smile I ever put on. Maya held Amari tighter than usual, like she was trying to prove something. She said a few polite little lines, then hurried across the lot. I stayed there until her old SUV disappeared around the corner of the building. Then I went back inside, locked both bolts, and turned on every light in the house, even though the sun was still out. I sat down at my kitchen table, pulled open that drawer, and set the recorder on the surface. It just lay there, small, black, cold like some tiny creature, pretending to sleep, carrying a kind of energy that made my breathing hitch. I turned it over in my hands, looking for anything. Scratches. A label. A mark. But it was clean, too clean, like somebody wiped it down before hiding it. There was a little switch on the side. On. Off. Just one flick, and I'd know the truth. I hesitated a long time. The kitchen went so quiet it felt wrong. All I could hear was the clock ticking, and my heartbeat, loud like somebody running on a hospital floor. I took a breath and flipped the recorder on. A soft click, then a long stretch of silence. For a moment, I thought maybe there wasn't anything on it, that maybe I'd built all this fear out of nothing. But just as I reached to shut it off, the first voice came through. A man's voice. Young, dry, tired, sounding like one of those boys who grew up along the west side of Atlanta tight, like he was talking while waiting for something to go wrong. "Maya, I told you. You can't keep up that act forever. What if she starts getting suspicious?" I shot up out of my chair, the legs scraping against the floor so loud it echoed. That voice. I didn't know who he was, but the way he said her name soft, familiar made my skin prickle, the kind of tone men use with a woman they trust too much, or been messing around with. Then I heard Maya, not sharp, not shaky, not the sweet young mother she always pretended to be around me. Her voice was low, steady, cold like the flat steel of a surgical blade. "Don't worry, she's old, and she trusts people too easily. She don't know a thing." My breath locked tight in my ribs. Me, who survived losing my husband, who held my tears when Malik was in that accident, who stood over more bodies in the ER than I care to remember, suddenly felt hollow in a way I never had before. The man spoke again, closer this time, like he stepped up near the recorder. You need to move faster. The bigger the damage, the more folks gonna start asking questions. Maya let out a long, calm sigh. No nerves, no guilt. You think I don't know that? But timing matters. If we rush it, everything falls apart. I sank back into the chair, put both hands on my head, trying not to break down. There wasn't one trace of hesitation in her voice. She sounded like she was talking about making dinner, not something dark, not something dangerous. Then the man said the words that froze every drop of blood in me. What about the baby? Every muscle in my face tightened. The baby? He meant Amari. Maya answered in a whisper. She's fine. She's the part that makes everything look legitimate. Malik's mama's emotional. With Amari around, she won't question a thing, Malik's mama. Me. My hand curled into a fist on the table until my knuckles turned white. I heard a chair drag in the recording, then the sound of Maya moving around like she was pacing a room just a few more months. When everything's set, Malik's mother will hand Amari over to me without question. She'll think it's what Malik wanted, Malik. My son's name echoing in my kitchen ripped another piece out of me. Malik died in a car crash last winter. At least, that's what the police told me. I spent a whole year grieving, forcing myself to believe it was God's will. But right now, Maya's voice was tearing that belief wide open. She kept talking, lower now, sharper. Don't worry, it'll look like an accident. The cops won't find a thing accident. The cops won't find a thing. I grabbed the edge of the table just to keep from collapsing. My mind spun, pieces of memory falling into place one after another. Malik's death, Maya's coldness during the funeral, her moving into that new apartment even though she claimed she was broke, her half-finished sentences, the strange phone calls she'd shut off when she saw me watching. All of it lined up. When I opened my eyes, the recorder was still playing. Maya's voice came through one last time, low and final. No one can know about this. As long as everything goes according to plan, we'll be fine. I shut the recorder off. Silence dropped. My bright kitchen suddenly felt as cold as an operating room at 3 a.m. I sat there for a long time, listening to the cars from the street, watching the steam from the kettle rise. I told myself to breathe, to calm down, but my heart wouldn't listen. It kept pounding like it was sounding the last alarm. I put my hand on the recorder, and in that moment, I knew one thing for sure. Malik's death wasn't fate, and Maya, the woman I once held like a daughter, was nowhere near as harmless as I thought. Nothing was the same anymore. I sat in that bright kitchen for damn near an hour, and my mind still couldn't crawl its way back to normal. That recorder laying right there in front of me felt like some tiny beast pretending to sleep, one touch away from tearing my life apart all over again. I'd played the recording 3 times, and every time my heart hurt in a different way. Some of it for my son, some for little Amari, and the rest was for my own foolishness. I couldn't carry this alone. I knew that as clear as I know the veins on the back of my hand. If I kept this buried inside me, the fear would kill me before the truth ever came out. So I did what I always do when the world gets too heavy to hold. I called my closest neighbor, Geneva Brooks. Geneva lives right next door, 67. Black woman. Hair all silver and curled like something painted. We've been side by side for over 10 years, sharing dinners, sharing knee pain pills, sharing sleepless nights with cop sirens screaming down the block. When she heard my shaky voice on the phone, she didn't ask no big questions. She just said, "I'm coming over." Not even a minute later, a knock hit my door. Geneva stepped inside, locked it behind her, and looked straight at me like she already knew something terrible had happened. She put her bag down, pulled a chair up right next to mine. "Cora, what is it? You look pale, like you just saw a ghost." I didn't know where to start. but I pulled the recorder out and laid it on the table. Geneva didn't understand yet, but she saw enough in my face to know it was serious. "What's in it?" she asked. I I think you need to hear it." I pressed play. This time, I didn't look at the recorder. I watched Geneva's face as it spoke. When the man's voice came in, her eyebrows pulled tight. When Maya spoke, Geneva whipped her head toward me, eyes wide. When they mentioned Malik and Amari, she covered her mouth with her hand. And once the part about the accident played, Geneva couldn't sit. She got up and started pacing my kitchen floor. When the recording finally ended, she stood there a long moment, both hands on the table, head bowed like she was gathering every thought she had. "Lord," she whispered, "Cora. This is serious." I swallowed hard, my throat raw. "Geneva, I think Malik didn't die in no accident. I think maybe it ain't no maybe. Cora." Geneva cut in, voice low and solid. "Those two were planning something. You think that's coincidence? This ain't random." Hearing it from her, hearing her say what I'd only dared to think, made the truth hit me so sharp I shivered. "What do I even do?" I asked, voice scraping. "I can't call the police with just this recorder. They'll think I'm paranoid." Geneva let out a long, heavy breath and sat back down. "You right. Cops need more than this to reopen a closed accident file. But Cora, we can find more. If Maya hid this, she hid something else." I stared at Geneva scared, but knowing she was right. "I can't go back to Maya's house," I whispered. "You won't need to," she said, eyes lighting up the way they do when she solves her Sunday crossword. "Maya brings Amari over here all the time. She always keeps that diaper bag close. If she managed to hide a recorder in that knit bag, who knows what else she'd been hiding." I blinked. Her idea came so fast, I needed a second to catch it. "You mean search Maya's bag when she comes here?" "Not just her bag," Geneva said, lowering her voice. "Her place is only 3 buildings down, and I know she keeps that back gate loose. I helped her fix the latch last year. If we pick the right moment, we can get in. Just for a few minutes, and find enough that the cops can't ignore." My mouth fell open. "Geneva, we ain't detectives or burglars." "Cora," she said, laying a hand on my shoulder, "this ain't stealing. This is protecting a child. And maybe getting justice for your boy." The conviction in her voice burned tears behind my eyes. I put my hands on the table, trying to steady myself. "We gotta be careful," I whispered. "Very careful." Of course, Geneva nodded. "But first thing, you act normal next time Maya shows up. I'll come over like usual, and when she ain't looking, I'll search that bag." I looked at this woman, my neighbor through sickness, through bills we couldn't pay, through lonely years without family, and felt something in me ease just a little. For the first time since hearing that recording, I wasn't alone. We spent the whole evening planning. Geneva wrote everything down neat, as if we were prepping for a difficult surgery. Check Maya's baby bag. Look for Paper's bank. If there's video or messages, record them. Don't touch anything she'll notice. Find the right moment to enter her place quick, clean, no signs. By the time Geneva left, the sky outside was dark. I touched it gently, that cold feeling sliding right into my skin. I knew the road ahead wasn't going to be easy, but for the first time since losing Malik, I didn't feel powerless. I looked around my small kitchen, the same place I cooked for Malik when he was little, the place Amari fell asleep on my shoulder, the place I cried through so many nights after the accident. And I told myself, if the truth is waiting for me, then I'm going to be strong enough to face it. At least now, I had Geneva friend, witness, ally, and somewhere deep in me, making room for something else. A slow, rising determination I didn't even know I had. We put a whole lot of time and heart into bringing this story to life. If you don't like it, go on and hit that like button. And if you do like it, make sure you subscribe to our channel. Now then, let's get back to the story. I thought that recorder was the worst thing I could ever find. I really did. I thought nothing else could break my heart any further after hearing Maya and that man talk about my son like Malik was nothing more than a math problem they needed to erase. But cruelty got layers. And that first layer, it was just the crack in a door leading straight into a darkness I wasn't ready for. 3 days after the night Geneva listened to that recording with me, Maya brought Amari over again. I tried my best to keep my voice steady when I opened the door, and all afternoon I kept my eyes away from that purse she dropped beside the sofa. Geneva, just like she promised, showed up a few minutes later with her cornbread, the kind she always bakes on weekends, warm and sweet like home. Nobody looking at us would have guessed two old black women smiling and talking about the weather were carrying a whole storm inside their chests. Maya knew her way to my kitchen real well, and when she took Amari in there to warm a bottle, Geneva moved like a shadow silent, fast slipping right to that bag. She gave me the signal to distract Maya, so I started rambling about how the neighbor upstairs been loud again in the middle of the night. Maya half listened, half nodded just enough to keep her in that kitchen for a few minutes. Then I heard it. The soft little cough from Geneva. That was the sign. By the time Maya came back to the living room, Geneva was already sitting neat and calm, like she hadn't moved an inch. That whole visit felt like a blade scraping across my nerves, but eventually Maya left. Geneva slipped into my apartment less than a minute later. Face pale enough that I knew she'd found something bad worse than bad Cora, she whispered as she shut the door. All I remember is Geneva pulling out a wrinkled manila envelope from her coat pocket, the kind used for office paperwork. No name, no label, just that one envelope look, she said. I slid the papers out. And the moment my eyes hit the first page, my blood went still. Malik's life insurance policy. Payout. $350,000. Sole beneficiary. Maya Ellis. Date signed. 8 months before Malik died. I gripped the edge of the table so hard my knuckles turned white. Malik never told me he took out a life insurance policy. And that amount? That timing? Geneva placed a steady hand on my shoulder. It ain't the only thing in there, Cora. She handed me the next page, an old fax printout of a bank statement. One transaction circled in red, $150,000 wired from Maya to a man named Carlton Voss 2 weeks after she collected the insurance payout. Who is he? I asked, my voice gravel. I did some digging. Geneva said, that name comes up with a loan shark outfit on the east side of Atlanta. Not the kind of folks good people deal with. Might be somebody who helped her with something. I understood exactly what Geneva couldn't bring herself to say. Maya paid someone after Malik died. This wasn't family debt. This wasn't emergency spending. This was secret money for secret business. And Geneva wasn't done. You gotta see this too, she murmured, handing me another folded set of papers she'd pulled from the bottom of the envelope. I opened it, and the world tilted. It was Amari's birth certificate. I read one line, then I read it again. Mother. Keisha Monroe, not Maya. My head felt like it cracked open. Amari wasn't Maya's child. I thought of that baby's sweet face, those big brown eyes, those tiny fingers curling around mine whenever she got sleepy. I thought of all the times Maya told me childbirth broke her down, how she struggled with postpartum depression. I remembered the tears she shed, the stories she fed me. And then I looked down at that cold government paper. The real mother, Keisha, wasn't Maya. Where was Keisha? Was she alive? Did she even know where her baby was? Geneva let out a heavy breath, the kind you only hear when somebody's scared to say what they're thinking. I searched her name. She said softly, a woman named Keisha Monroe went missing in Georgia 3 years ago. But the public reports don't say much else. I didn't dare speak the fear rising in my throat, but it spoke itself anyway. What did Maya do to Amari's real mother? My hands shook so hard I could barely hold the paper. Malik never told me Maya had a difficult pregnancy, never said where she supposedly gave birth. At Malik's funeral, she didn't shed half the tears I expected from a young widow. I convinced myself it was her way of grieving. I believed her. I believed she loved Malik. I believed she loved Amari. And now all that belief was rotting away like wood eaten out from the inside. Geneva gently folded the documents and set them on the table, neat and careful. She didn't try to comfort me. She knew better. Some truths can't be softened, Cora, she said, voice low but solid. Maya been hiding too much. Fake mother information, insurance money, secret transfers. This ain't simple. Not by a long shot. I nodded, but tears were already slipping down my face. Not from fear, no, from heartbreak. I cried for Malik. I cried for Amari. And I cried for a woman named Keisha who might have vanished from this world with nobody left to say her name. And at that moment, I understood something new. The recorder was only the first door. There was a whole dark room behind it. And I had only just stepped inside. I used to think I knew what fear felt like. I've walked through bloody ER nights, held the hands of patients taking their last breaths, watched their families scream and collapse on cold floors. But the feeling I had looking at that stack of papers, Geneva found, the insurance policy, the bank statement, Amari's birth certificate, and that recorder sitting on my table, it wasn't like any fear I'd known before. It was deeper, colder, like an invisible hand squeezing my chest from the inside. Geneva and I spent 2 more days just trying to steady ourselves and figure out what to do next. Plenty of times, I wanted to tear everything up and throw it straight into the fire. I wanted to believe I misunderstood. I wanted to believe Maya couldn't be capable of what the truth was showing me, but I ain't the type to live in denial. And the truth was way too clear to turn my face away from Cora, Geneva said on the 3rd morning, sitting at my kitchen table with a hot cup of peppermint tea fogging up her glasses. It's time. We gotta go to the police. Her words twisted my stomach tight. I stayed quiet a long while. Geneva, what if they don't believe us? What if they think I'm just some old woman imagining things because I lost my son? If you keep quiet, Geneva answered, her voice dropping low like a church drum. You lettin' Maya keep doing whatever she been doing. And baby, someone else might end up paying for it. She was the only person willing to stare this truth in the face with me. And I knew she was right. So we gathered everything. The recorder, the printed documents, the manila envelope, the notes we'd scribbled over the past few days. I put everything inside Malik's old laptop bag, not because it was convenient, but because holding something that belonged to him felt like carrying a piece of him with me. We drove down to the precinct downtown, the one with that messy parking lot and the smell of fast food drifting all over the place. The station looked worn down like most buildings in poor neighborhoods, paint peeling, old plastic chairs, an AC unit rattling louder than it worked. I didn't know what I expected, but it sure wasn't the coldness reality hit me with. When I told the desk officer I wanted to reopen my son's death because I suspected foul play, he looked at us like we were pitching a Netflix documentary. He asked a few tired questions before sending us to a detective named Harris, a tall, brown-skinned man with a buzz cut and eyes that had seen too much to be surprised by anything anymore. He pointed to a chair. Have a seat. Where do you want to start? I opened the bag, and I told the whole story. I told him everything from Maya tossing the knit bag, to the recorder, to the talk about an accident, to the insurance policy and Amari's birth certificate. I spoke in a voice even I didn't recognize, scared, but steady, like I was standing between 2 cliffs, and the truth was the only thing holding me up. Geneva handed him the documents. He didn't show much on his face, but I saw something change in his eyes when he reached the recording and the birth certificate. When I finished, Detective Harris sat still for a few seconds, then leaned forward. I'm gonna be straight with you, he said. This stuff, it can't be ignored, but to reopen a closed case, we need more than a recording and a handful of questionable documents. I nodded, even though my heart dropped. But then he continued, that said, if what you're telling me is real, this ain't just a suspicious death. It could be part of something bigger. We'll examine everything you brought. So Geneva and I waited 2 hours, the longest 2 hours of my life. People walked in and out, officers, folks filing complaints, young men in cuffs. It all blended into the usual sad city mess. But for me, every minute felt like a hammer hitting the same spot on my ribs. When Detective Harris finally came back, he was holding some printouts and a tablet. "We reviewed it," he said, "and there are inconsistencies." He placed the first page in front of me. "This is Malik's accident report. Car lost control, hit a guardrail, died on impact. No signs of struggle, no witnesses. But," he lowered his voice, "there's one thing in the forensics report that never got explained. Bruising on his left arm. No listed cause." My heart clenched. "You think—" "I didn't think anything," Harris cut in. "Not until I heard that recording." He paused. "I've forwarded everything to the reevaluation unit. They'll determine if Malik's death might not have been an accident." I put a hand to my chest. I didn't know if it was pain or relief or both. Then he placed another document down. And about Amari's birth certificate. Her biological mother, Keisha Monroe, does have a missing persons report. She disappeared 3 years ago. No remains ever found. I stared at the word missing, feeling something inside me fracture again. Geneva spoke up for me. "You think these cases are connected?" Detective Harris didn't answer right away. He looked at us like he needed to weigh every word, I think. "Maya might be involved in more than we realized, and the pieces are starting to line up." He stood. "I'm filing for a surveillance order on Maya Ellis. If she tries to run or harm anyone, we need to know before she does." I nodded, but my legs shook so hard I had to grab the chair. On the drive home, neither of us said a word. The city kept roaring, bus brakes screeching, people arguing on corners, somebody blasting hip-hop too loud, but to me, everything felt wrapped in a gray, heavy fog. When I walked into my apartment, I stopped dead in the doorway. The lamp shined right over the little chair where Amari always sat and played. And that light hit me like a truth I didn't want but couldn't escape. If Maya really had a hand in Malik's death, and if Keisha really disappeared because of someone's doing, then Amari, that innocent little baby, was sitting in the center of something far more dangerous than I ever imagined. I closed the door, leaned back against it, and for the first time in years, I asked myself, what have I stepped into? And do I have enough strength left to keep going? Ever since we brought those documents down to the police station, I've been living in a half-awake, half-dazed kind of state. I still went to my part-time shifts at the community clinic, but I couldn't remember a single thing any patient said to me. I cooked dinner but couldn't taste a bite of it. I slept in broken pieces, and every time I closed my eyes, I heard Maya's voice from that recorder. She old. She won't suspect a thing. Like a blade twisting inside my skull. Detective Harris called a few times. He said they'd gotten a surveillance order on Maya Ellis and were monitoring her. But that didn't ease my heart. I knew Maya well enough to understand. When she felt trapped, she wasn't the type to sit still and wait for justice to find her. And I was right. That morning, the sky was heavy and gray, clouds hanging over Atlanta like a thick blanket. I was making coffee when my phone buzzed. Detective Harris's number. "I'm here," I answered, my heartbeat already stumbling. His voice came through sharp, more urgent than I'd ever heard it. "Mrs. Cora, are you at home?" "Yes." "Why? What's happening?" There was a short pause. Then he just said it. "Maya is attempting to leave the state. We detained her at the federal bus terminal. She had the child with her." I nearly dropped the mug in my hand. "Amari," I breathed out, my voice breaking. "Yes, the child is safe. But we need you to come to the station immediately." I don't remember grabbing my coat or locking the door. I only remember my knees shaking as I went down the stairs. Geneva heard me in the hallway, opened her door, took one look at my face, and didn't ask a single question. She just grabbed her coat and came with me, like muscle memory born from all our years of friendship. At the station, Detective Harris met us in the lobby, face tight and serious. They caught Maya with a ticket to Birmingham. She had a large suitcase, cash, children's clothes, and every document tied to Amari. My head spun. Why? Why would she try to run with that baby? I whispered. My voice sounded like it belonged to somebody else. Geneva pressed her hand against my back to steady me. We haven't questioned her yet, Harris said, but given what you both brought us, we believe she felt cornered and tried to disappear. I clutched the strap of Malik's old bag, fighting to stay calm. And Amari, where is she now? Harris took a slow breath. We've separated the child from Maya, but legally, because neither the biological mother nor father is present or verified, the girl will be transferred to Child Protective Services until a suitable guardian is identified. Not like that, I stammered. I'm her grandmother. I've cared for her since she could crawl. She calls me Nana. She can't sleep unless I'm near. Harris's eyes softened. Mrs. Cora, I understand. And you can file for temporary guardianship. Given that your report initiated this entire investigation, you have strong grounds to apply. Then, please, I said, immediately I'll do it. I'll do everything. Every paper. Geneva squeezed my shoulder in support. We'll take you to the social worker's office, Harris said. They'll need to evaluate your home, health, finances, and background, but I believe you'll pass. I nodded, tears slipping down without my permission. A social worker named Renee met us. Small woman, warm brown skin, soft voice like early spring rain. Mrs. Cora, I'll be handling this case. We'll move as quickly as possible so Amari doesn't stay long in the center. Just hearing the word center made something inside me cave in. I used to visit that place back when I worked community nursing, little ones huddled together, eyes scared and empty like birds with broken wings. Please, please don't keep her there long, I whispered. Renee held my hand, firm, gentle. She was sitting in a small room at the children's center, clutching a worn-out teddy bear. When I stepped inside, she lifted those big, dark eyes up at me, and in that moment, I wasn't a 63-year-old widow with a shattered heart. I wasn't a mother who lost her son. I was just a grandmother seeing her baby pulled into a storm she didn't deserve. Nana, Amari whispered, voice shaky. Then she ran straight into my arms. I held her so tight my ribs hurt. Her warmth melted me, and my tears fell into her soft little curls. Nana's here, I whispered. Nana ain't letting nobody take you away. Not ever again. Amari sobbed into my chest, tiny hands gripping my shirt. Why did Mommy yell at me? I closed my eyes. My heart broke all over again. You didn't do anything wrong, baby. Not a thing. That was all I could manage. Renee stood at the doorway, wiping her own eyes. The next 3 days were the longest days of my life. They inspected my apartment, my tiny kitchen, my worn bedroom, my medicine cabinet, everything. They asked about my health, my job, my finances, my ability to care for a child during an ongoing investigation. I answered every question as honestly as I could. When the final decision came down late on the 3rd day, I had to sit because my legs wouldn't hold me. I was approved for temporary guardianship of Amari. I covered my face and cried, not because I won something, but because I could finally hold on to a child I'd been silently afraid of losing for so long. Renee placed Amari into my arms. She'll stay with you until the investigation is complete. I held that little girl like I was holding the whole world. I didn't know where Malik's case was heading. I didn't know how many more secrets Maya buried. I didn't know how brutal the road ahead might be. But at least I had Amari in my arms. And I swore on, whatever pieces of my heart were still left, I will keep that child safe, even if the whole damn world falls apart. I thought Maya getting arrested at that federal bus station was the peak of this whole nightmare. But life got a way of reminding you that what you call the worst is often just the first step down into a pit you ain't seen the bottom of yet. After Amari was placed with me as her temporary guardian, our lives shifted into something completely different. No more sitting alone in a quiet apartment waiting for a key to turn in the lock. No more empty nights with just the TV talking to me. Now it was tiny feet pattering across the floor. Amari laughing herself silly whenever I pretended to hide that old teddy bear. And Nana ringing out every morning like a little reminder that I still had a reason to get up. But that joy was fragile thin as a sheet thrown over a fire burning underneath. Any moment, the flames could swallow everything whole. Detective Harris called me on a wet, heavy afternoon while I was tying Amari's hair, getting her ready for preschool. His voice came tight and low, the kind of tone a man uses when he's carrying news he wishes he didn't have to say. Mrs. Cora, he started. We executed a court-ordered search on Maya Ellis's residence. I sank into the nearest chair, my fingers still holding Amari's hair tie. She tilted her head back slightly, waiting for me to keep going. Did you find anything? I asked, barely hearing my own whisper. Yes, he said, and that one word made my heart stumble. And I need you to come see for yourself. I left Amari with Geneva, then grabbed a ride share to the address Harris sent. It was the apartment complex where Maya and Malik lived before he died. I'd been there plenty of times, but never with the cold dread that wrapped around me now. The door had been forced open. Yellow police line tape stretched across the frame, fluttering in the weak breeze. A young female officer opened the door for me. The place smelled damp, mixed with cleaning chemicals, like the investigators had torn everything apart. Detective Harris stood in the living room beside a large bookshelf that had been pulled away from the wall. He nodded at me. You're here. Come take a look. I stepped closer. Behind the shelf was a hollowed-out section of wall, cut, clean, and hidden with surprising skill. A rectangle just big enough for something heavy. That something was sitting on the table in front of me. A safe? Not a big one, but heavy enough that 2 officers had to pry it from the wall cavity. The metal was scratched up. The kind of wear that only comes with years of use. Found it here, Harris said. Pointing to the hole, someone covered it with a thin sheet of drywall behind the shelf. I swallowed hard. What? What was inside? Harris motioned to the young officer. She opened a plastic evidence container and pulled out the clear bags one by one. I forgot to breathe. The first bag held a cell phone older than the one we'd found in Amari's knit bag. Screen cracked, body worn, but absolutely unmistakable. Someone kept this for a reason. The second bag held a stack of frantic handwritten notes. Through the plastic, I could make out a few jagged lines. Send money before the 12th. Don't let her come back to Atlanta, 4 p.m. Bus make sure I turned to Harris. But he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the third bag. This one held an ID card. Name: Keisha Monroe. Photo: a young woman with a warm smile and sad, gentle eyes. My hand flew to my mouth, though I didn't dare touch the plastic. Something inside me shattered clean through. This is Amari's biological mother, Harris said quietly. Or was his voice wasn't firm. There was hesitation in it, but I heard the fear underneath. We found this at the bottom of the Fictin safe, along with a small notebook. He handed it to me. The first page was a list of names. Long. It took me several seconds before my mind recognized what I was seeing. Keisha's name was in the middle. Malik's name was near the bottom. And at the very top were 3 names I'd never heard marked with red ink. Who are these people? My voice cracked. We're investigating, Harris said, but every name on this list belongs to someone who's either been reported missing within the past 5 years or died in an accident. My knees buckled, and I had to grab the table to stay standing. Harris continued, slower this time, a cold kind of careful. Mrs. Cora, we can't make official conclusions yet, but what we found in that safe combined with the recorder and the documents you brought suggests Maya may be connected to more than Malik's death. The room tilted around me. What are you saying? I whispered. I'm saying, Harris hesitated. We suspect Maya may have been involved in multiple crimes, possibly fraud, exploitation, or direct harm to individuals connected to the victims listed here. Then he met my eyes. That includes Keisha. My whole body went numb, like my bones weren't holding me up anymore. All I could think of was Amari, her soft little face when she slept, lips tucked in like she was dreaming something sweet. Her tiny voice calling me Nana, her arms wrapped around my neck. I stared at Keisha's ID through the plastic bag, feeling a deep, wrenching ache. Amari's mother, had disappeared without a trace. Her name was sitting in Maya's secret wall safe. And her daughter, her precious daughter, ended up in the hands of a woman who might have done unforgivable things. I leaned on the table so I wouldn't collapse. Detective Harris stepped closer, his voice gentler now. We'll be digging deeper. And there may be a new case opening soon, related to Keisha Monroe. I want you to prepare yourself. I nodded, though the tears had already started falling before I even lifted my head. I turned away, afraid that if anyone saw my face, everything I'd tried so hard to hold together these past weeks would finally fall apart. There was no turning back from the truth now. And in that moment, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. I would do anything to protect Amari from the darkness Maya left behind. Thank y'all for sticking with us all the way to this point. If you're busy or gotta go right now, hit that like button so you can find this video easy later. All right, now, let's get back to the story. I used to think the hardest moment of my life was the day I got the news Malik was gone. Then I thought it was the day I pressed play on that recorder I found in Amari's knit bag. Then I thought it was the day I saw Keisha's ID hidden inside that secret wall safe. But when Maya's trial finally began, I learned something. There's no such thing as the last pain. Pain just stacks on top of itself, layer over layer, until you don't even know what you're crying for anymore. Your dead son, a child stolen from her real mother, or the whole world you once believed was safe. The trial opened in March, when the winter winds were still hanging on, but sunlight was starting to slip into the corners of the city. I took Amari with me that first day, not so she could see the woman who raised her get judged, but because I simply couldn't bear to leave her behind. She held my hand tight. She didn't cry, but the silence of a child. Sometimes it's heavier than any sob. The DA's office had gathered enough evidence to charge Maya with a long list: fraud, kidnapping, document forgery, conspiracy to cause harm, and an expanding charge related to Malik's death. They still needed time to tie every piece to specific criminal responsibility. But this trial, this first one, was for everything already proven on paper and in evidence. I sat in the last row, Geneva beside me, Amari curled in my lap. Across the room, Maya sat between her two defense attorneys, still as stone. No remorse, no fear, not even a glance in my direction. I looked at her and felt nothing but emptiness. This monster once sat at my dinner table, once held my son in her arms, once pressed her face into Amari's little curls. And now, all I could see in her eyes was an endless, hollow, dark. The prosecutor went through the evidence one piece at a time. The first, recorder. The second, phone from the wall safe. The handwritten notes, planning money transfers. Keisha's ID. The list of missing or accidentally deceased individuals. Parking garage footage of Maya meeting repeatedly with Carlton Voss, the man now being investigated as a middleman for underground dealings. Each piece cut deeper than the last, but I stayed still, arms wrapped around Amari, my only anchor. Her tiny breath against my neck was the only thing keeping me from breaking. Then came the testimony of Carlton Voss. He looked tired, hollow-eyed. He'd agreed to talk in exchange for a lesser sentence. He said Maya paid him to clean up parts of her past, including falsifying paperwork when she took Amari without going through legal adoption. He denied involvement in any deaths, but what mattered was the thing he admitted outright. Maya didn't want the real mother found. She said, the fewer people who know, the easier it is to keep everything under her control. The whole courtroom went cold. I pulled Amari closer, my heart tightening like a fist inside my chest. During the defense, Maya's attorney tried to paint her as a victim of circumstance, that Voss pressured her, that the notes were normal financial stress, that the recording was taken out of context. But the prosecutor crushed that argument with one move. By playing the video recovered from the phone in the safe, it wasn't just evidence, it was truth laid bare. In the video, Maya spoke to someone, face unseen, her voice calm as still water. She talked about controlling the situation, about making certain people disappear from Atlanta and setting up a new life with Amari. No shake, no fear, no regret, just cold calculation, the kind that makes your skin crawl. I glanced at Maya. She watched herself on that screen without blinking. That was the moment I knew my son never stood a chance against that level of cruelty. When the final conclusion was read, the courtroom went silent. The prosecutor ended with, Miss Maya Ellis built a life on lies, manipulation, and the disappearance of those more vulnerable than her. Justice cannot bring back the lost, but it can ensure she harms no one else again. Maya was found guilty on all the clear charges, maximum sentencing for each. The charges tied to Malik's death and Keisha's disappearance would move into a separate second trial. When they cuffed Maya and led her out, Amari suddenly lifted her head. She didn't cry, but a single tear slid down her cheek. She didn't understand it all, but something inside her felt that pain. I held her close, pressing her cheek to my shoulder. Nana's here, I whispered. No one's taken you away again. The months after passed, slow but warm. Amari started preschool, made little friends. She drew pictures of me and her, two stick figures holding hands under a blue sky with a big yellow smiling sun. I taped every drawing on the living room wall. On nights she woke crying from dreams of Maya yelling. I held her until she fell asleep again. I told her the same bedtime stories I used to tell Malik. I taught her how to tie her shoes, how to count, how to tell the difference between people who mean well and people you gotta stay away from. And me? I learned how to breathe again. I learned how to live with a pain that no longer stabbed, but lingered like an old scar. Sore sometimes, but no longer killing me. I learned how to smile when I saw Amari running through the yard, her little legs flying, sunlight catching on her hair. I learned how to believe that Malik, somewhere beyond all this, could see his daughter being loved the way she always deserved. And I know, not by a long shot, but for the first time in a long time, I can say to myself, we survived and we're learning how to live again. There's something I learned after everything, all the horrors, all the nights that almost broke me. Time don't heal every wound, but it teaches you how to live with them. It teaches you how to breathe again, without fearing that every breath is going to drag up another sharp memory. It teaches you how to look back without shaking. And most of all, it teaches you how to cherish what's still here. Life for me and Amari, after the trial, settled into something slow, steady, and peaceful. I poured everything I had into that child, taking her to school, teaching her how to write letters, listening to her talk about her friends, the silly games they played, the things that made her laugh so hard she lost her breath. She grew up fast, so fast that some days I'd look at that girl reading by the window and forget she used to be a tiny little thing trembling in my arms when her whole world fell apart. And me, I kept getting older, and the wounds in my heart, the ones that started the day Malik died, never disappeared. But next to Amari, they weren't abysses anymore. They became pieces of a story I carried, not to hurt me, but to remind me I survived it. When Amari turned 16, she sat down next to me in the living room, twisting the hem of her shirt like she was gearing up to say something big. I saw that worry in her eyes. That kind of worry kids only get when the truth they're facing is bigger than they are. Nana, she whispered, voice trembling, I want to know who my real mother was. Even though I knew this day would come, the question still tightened something deep inside my chest. I'd tried to give her the calmest childhood I could, but the truth I carried alone all those years, had always been waiting for her to ask. I took her hand, felt her warmth against my skin. If you're ready, I said softly, Nana will tell you everything. And I did, piece by piece. About Keisha, the young woman who gave birth to her. About her disappearance, still unsolved. About the wall safe and the ID card. About what we suspected, what we couldn't prove, and the pain that stretched all the way through me every time I thought of it. I didn't speak with anger. I didn't speak with bitterness. I spoke like someone who had lived long with both love and sorrow. Someone who knew the truth, no matter how cruel, belonged in her hands now. Amari listened in silence. When I finished, she leaned her head on my shoulder, and I felt her tears soaking into my shirt. I wish, she whispered, breaking apart. I wish Mama Keisha was still here so I could call her Mom just once. I wrapped my arms around her and let her cry. There ain't no comfort big enough to erase that kind of grief. But I knew, right then, her heart and mine were both finding a truth we needed to grow. Years passed. Amari turned 21, strong, steady, and gentle, in a way the world couldn't hurt anymore. She told me she wanted to study child development and trauma therapy, something that stunned me and moved me all at once. Nana, she said one night while we were arranging flowers in the kitchen, I want to help kids like me, kids who didn't know where they came from, or who didn't know if anybody really loved them. I looked at her and saw Malik, his eyes, alive in her in the most miraculous way. Even though he was gone, the best of him lived on in that little girl he never got to watch grow. She became the most beautiful thing this cruel world ever gave me. One autumn afternoon, while I was folding laundry, Amari walked into my room with something hidden behind her back. She had that mischievous smile, the one that always meant a surprise was coming. Nana, close your eyes, she said. I did. And a moment later, something soft touched my hands. When I started taking knitting classes, she said, I had a project I wanted to finish just for you. I opened my eyes. In my hands was a new blanket, soft, warm, caramel colored, the same shade as that knit bag from all those years ago. But this one carried no secrets, no suffering, no hidden darkness, just warmth, just love. My fingers trembled as I touched it. I made it for you, Nana, Amari said. Not to hide anything, but to remind you that even if our past started with a bag full of shadows, our future doesn't have to be. I pulled the blanket to my chest, then pulled Amari into my arms. We stood there, in that small room, the same room that once held every fear I had of losing her, and I felt something alive, something kind, something new flowing through the air between us. I still visit Malik's grave sometimes. I lay white roses on the stone, drape a corner of the new blanket over the top, and whisper, Son, you never disappeared. You're here in every tear, every smile, every heartbeat, in the child you never got to see grow. Nana and Amari, we still living, still loving, and still carrying the story you left behind. The afternoon wind brushes my cheek, and I know Malik hears me. Then I walk back home, back to where Amari is waiting with dinner, with her whole future opening wide ahead of her. This story ain't the journey of a victim. It's the journey of two people, one old, one young, who held on to each other through the dark and stepped into the light. And that light, it's real. It's ours. If you've listened this far, I want to ask you something. Have you ever faced a hurt so deep you thought you'd never rise again? But somehow, the light found you anyway? Share it in the comments. I want to hear your story. And if this one touched your heart, leave a like so I know you're still here, walking with me to the very end.